The city hummed its usual evening song, a busy tune of car engines and distant chatter. For Sasha, this was just the background noise to a normal life. She spent her days in a small, warm cafe, serving coffee and pastries to friendly faces. She lived in a small apartment that felt just right, and her world was made bright by her best friend, Rosa. Rosa was the quiet one, the kind of person who saw the world as a gentle place, always getting lost in a book or her own thoughts. She was the opposite of Sasha in many ways, which is why their friendship worked so perfectly. Tonight was a special night. They were going to a restaurant called the Opal Room, a place so fancy Sasha had spent a week trying to decide what to wear. Rosa had gotten a new job, a wonderful job in a quiet office, and this dinner was their celebration. The Opal Room was everything Sasha imagined and more. The lights were soft and golden, glittering off the glasses on each table. The air smelled of rich food and expensive perfume. People talked in low, happy voices, the clink of forks on plates making a gentle music. Sasha felt a little like a princess, and seeing Rosa's shy, excited smile made it even better. They talked about Rosa's new job, about their dreams, and for a while, the world felt simple and perfect. Rosa, flushed with happiness from the celebration, finished her glass of sparkling red soda. "I'm just going to the restroom," she whispered to Sasha, her eyes bright. Sasha nodded, taking a sip of her own water and smiling back. This is where the normal night ended and the dangerous one began. Rosa, always a little clumsy, was making her way back through the maze of tables. She was looking down, careful not to meet anyone's gaze, when her foot caught on the leg of a chair. Time seemed to slow down. She stumbled forward, and the half-full glass of dark, red soda in her hand flew from her grasp. It sailed through the air in a graceful, terrible arc and landed with a shocking splash all over a man sitting at a secluded, velvet booth. The liquid soaked instantly into the pristine, expensive-looking fabric of his dark suit jacket. The chatter in the restaurant died all at once, as if someone had flipped a switch to mute the entire world. The man stood up. He was tall and broad-shouldered, and his movement was slow and controlled, like a predator uncoiling. This was Nico. He was not just any man, he was a man who was used to silence falling when he entered a room, not because of an accident. His face was hard, his jaw tight. The soda dripped from his sleeve onto the floor. Two other large men, who had been sitting at a nearby table, were now on their feet, their faces like stone. Rosa was frozen solid, a statue of pure terror. Her hands were pressed to her mouth, and her eyes were wide, filling with tears. I'm so sorry," she stammered, her voice a tiny, broken whisper in the vast quiet. Nico looked down at his ruined suit, then his cold, dark eyes moved to Rosa. He didn't say a word, but the look on his face was enough to make several people at nearby tables look down at their plates, afraid to witness what might happen next. Sasha's heart was hammering against her ribs like a wild bird. She saw the sheer terror on Rosa's face, a look she had never seen before. She saw the two grim bodyguards. She saw the powerful, angry man towering over her best friend. Without a single thought, without a plan, her body moved on its own. She was at Rosa's side in seconds, pushing her way between her friend and the scary man. Her own fear was a sharp taste in her mouth, but her love for Rosa was a stronger force. She saw her own glass of water, still half full, sitting on their table. In one fluid, desperate motion, she grabbed it and threw the entire contents into Nico's face. The water hit him with a soft, wet slap. It dripped from his dark hair, down his nose, and onto his already ruined suit. The silence in the room became even heavier, so thick you could almost touch it. No one moved. No one breathed. This was it, Sasha thought. She had made everything 1,000 times worse. Nico slowly raised a hand and wiped the water from his eyes. He looked at his wet fingers, then his gaze, intense and unreadable, locked onto Sasha. She stood her ground, trying to look brave, but her knees were shaking. Then, the impossible happened. A slow, slight smile touched his lips. It wasn't a friendly smile, but a smirk of genuine, surprised interest. "I like brave women," he said, his voice low and calm, cutting through the silence. He flicked his hand slightly, and his two bodyguards immediately stepped back, giving Rosa space. "Let her go," he said, not taking his eyes off Sasha. Rosa didn't need to be told twice. She scurried back to their table, shaking. "But you," Nico continued, taking a step closer to Sasha. "You owe me a new suit. And your name." Sasha's mind was racing. She just wanted to get herself and Rosa out of there safely. "Sasha," she said, forcing her voice not to tremble. "My name is Sasha." Nico nodded, that smirk still playing on his lips. "Sasha," he repeated, as if tasting the name. A debt isn't paid with just a name. You will meet me for coffee tomorrow. We will discuss how you plan to fix this. He named a time and a place. It was not a request, it was an order wrapped in a quiet tone. Sasha knew arguing was pointless. She simply nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Without another word, she turned, grabbed a trembling Rosa, and walked as quickly as she could out of the opal room, feeling Nico's eyes on her back the entire way. The warm night air outside never felt so cold, or so free. The morning after the incident at the opal room felt entirely wrong to Sasha. The sun was shining too brightly, the birds outside her window were singing too cheerfully. It was as if the world had decided to simply forget about the terrifying, heart-pounding event of the previous night. But Sasha's body remembered. A nervous, fluttering feeling had taken up permanent residence in her stomach, and it fluttered wildly as she looked at the clock on her wall, watching the hands move relentlessly toward the time of her meeting with Nico. She had barely slept, her mind replaying the scene over and over, the splash of water, the terrifying silence, and that slow, dangerous smirk. Rosa had called her 5 times already, her voice a mixture of panic and guilt, asking if Sasha was sure she should go. Sasha wasn't sure of anything, except that she had given her word, and somewhere deep down, beneath all the fear, was a stubborn, burning curiosity about the man who had found her bravery interesting instead of insulting. The cafe he had named was not what she expected. She had imagined a dark, backroom place, maybe with his bodyguards at the door. Instead, it was a beautiful, sunlit place called the Glass House, with walls made entirely of windows and filled with green, growing plants. It was open and airy, the complete opposite of the shadowy power she associated with him. She spotted him immediately. He was sitting at a corner table, away from the other few patrons, dressed in a simple, dark sweater that looked incredibly soft. There was no suit, no visible bodyguards, just a man waiting with 2 steaming cups of coffee already on the table. He stood up as she approached, a small, polite gesture that threw her off balance. "Sasha," he said, his voice warmer than it had been last night. "Thank you for coming." She simply nodded, sliding into the chair opposite him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to hide their shaking. The first few minutes were a quiet, careful dance of words. He asked her if she took sugar in her coffee. She asked him if this was his usual spot. They talked about the weather, the unusual brightness of the day. It was all so normal, so painfully ordinary, that Sasha felt her begin to slowly melt away, replaced by a profound confusion. This was not the monster from the restaurant. This man had calm, intelligent eyes that watched her with a focus that was intense but not threatening. He finally set his cup down and looked at her directly. "I have to ask," he began, his tone conversational. "Last night. Most people would have apologized, begged, or run. You threw a drink in my face. Why?" Sasha took a deep breath, deciding to tell the plain truth. Rosa she's like a sister. She's shy, and the world scares her sometimes. She didn't mean to spill that drink. She was just scared. And when I saw the look on her face, I just acted. I couldn't let her be that scared. She met his gaze, expecting to see anger or mockery. Instead, he just listened, his head tilted slightly. Nico leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Loyalty," he said, as if it were a rare artifact he had just identified. "It's a powerful thing. Not as common as it should be." He then began to talk about himself, not about power or fear, but about his life. He told her about the businesses he ran, legitimate ones like import companies and restaurants. He explained, in a careful way, that his role was often more about keeping order, about making sure the people who depended on him were safe and could provide for their families. He talked about the city not as a kingdom to rule, but as a complicated machine he helped keep running. Sasha found herself listening, truly listening. He wasn't making excuses, he was simply showing her a side of his world she had never imagined. He asked her about her life at the cafe, and he laughed, a genuine, warm sound, when she told him a story about a customer who tried to pay for a muffin with a painting they had made. This first meeting stretched for over 2 hours, and it ended with a quiet question. "Would you be willing to do this again?" Nico asked. "To talk?" Sasha, surprised by her own answer, heard herself say yes. And so began a series of secret meetings. They never went to the same place twice. Sometimes it was a walk through a quiet art museum, where they would discuss the stories behind the paintings. Other times, it was a long drive in his car along the coast, the windows down, the salt air whipping through their hair as they talked about everything and nothing. Books they had read, places they dreamed of visiting, their favorite foods. Sasha found herself telling him things she hadn't even told Rosa, about her dreams of one day owning her own little bakery, a place that would smell always of warm bread and cinnamon. Nico, in turn, shared fragments of a younger self, a boy who had wanted to be an architect, who loved the logic and beauty of structures. He never shared too much, but he shared enough for Sasha to see the man he might have been, the man that still lived inside the powerful one. The spark of curiosity she felt that first night began to grow into a steady, warm flame. She found herself looking forward to their time together, to the sound of his voice, to the way his entire face changed when he smiled a real, unguarded smile. She stopped being afraid of Nico and started to enjoy being with the man he was when he was with her. One evening, a soft, steady rain began to fall as they were walking back to her apartment after a quiet dinner. They ran the last block, laughing as the cold drops soaked into their hair and clothes. They stopped under the awning of her building, breathless and smiling. The street was quiet, the only sound the gentle drumming of the rain around them. The laughter faded from Nico's eyes, replaced by a soft, serious intensity. He reached out and gently took her hand, his fingers lacing through hers. His touch was warm and sure. "Sasha," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the rain. He didn't say anything else. He simply leaned in and pressed his lips to hers. It was not a demanding kiss, or a rushed one. It was slow, and questioning, and incredibly sweet. It was a kiss that held all the unspoken words from all their conversations. When he pulled away, Sasha's heart was beating fast, but not from fear. It was beating with a new, thrilling hope. She squeezed his hand, a silent answer to his unspoken question, before turning and walking into her building, the memory of his kiss warming her all the way up to her apartment. The world had taken on a new, golden hue for Sasha. Her normal life now felt like a beautiful backdrop to the secret, thrilling reality she shared with Nico. Their meetings felt less like a necessity and more like a precious, private world. She learned the small things about him, how he stirred his coffee 3 times, the crinkles by his eyes when he laughed, the surprising gentleness in his hands. She saw his patience with elderly shop owners. He was a man of deep contrasts, and she was falling for both sides of him. Nico was transformed in her presence. The constant tension in his shoulders eased. He talked about futures he had buried, not of power, but of peace. He loved her fearlessness, how she challenged him without fear. She was his sanctuary. This new protectiveness led him to quietly instruct Marco, his most trusted man, to keep a distant watch over Sasha. He didn't tell her, he didn't want to frighten her with the shadows that lingered at the edges of his world. One evening, Sasha was closing the cafe late. The streets were quiet. She took a shortcut through a narrow alley, her mind filled with thoughts of Nico. A sleek black car pulled to a silent stop, blocking the alley. 2 large men stepped from the shadows. "Nico sends his regards," one growled. It was a lie, and she knew it. Panic seized her. She turned to run, but a third man emerged, cutting off her escape. One grabbed her arm, his grip like iron. Sasha fought, kicking and screaming, but her bravery felt futile against their strength. Meanwhile, Marco saw it all from his car. His phone was at his ear instantly. "Boss, they have her." "The alley. It's Silas's men." He was already moving, weapon drawn. Nico was in a business meeting when his phone vibrated. The moment he heard Marco's words, the world stopped. The calm businessman vanished. His face paled, then transformed into pure fury. He didn't speak. He stood, his chair crashing down, and ran. His car tore through the streets, every second an agony. The thought of Sasha in danger unleashed a primal rage. The car screeched to a halt. Nico was out before it stopped, weapon in hand. He saw Sasha struggling, a hand clamped over her mouth. He moved with terrifying efficiency. Marco engaged one man, Nico went for the one holding Sasha. It was over in brutal moments. The attackers lay subdued. Nico rushed to Sasha, his hands trembling as he cupped her face. "Are you hurt?" "Look at me," he said, his voice ragged. Sasha, shaking, saw the raw truth in his eyes, the fear, the anger, the relief. This was a man stripped bare. He pulled her into a crushing embrace. "I was so afraid. I thought I lost you," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I love you. Your brave heart captured mine. Completely." Tears of relief filled Sasha's eyes. She placed a hand on his racing heart. "I'm not afraid," she whispered. "I see your heart, Nico. And I love you, too." In the quiet aftermath, they found a peace stronger than any danger. He took her to his home, a place he had never shared, and held her all night. Her brave mistake had led not to danger, but to a love powerful enough to last a lifetime. The world did not suddenly become a safer, simpler place after the night in the alley. The shadows that existed at the edges of Nico's world did not magically vanish, but they no longer held any power over Sasha's heart. Instead of fear, she felt a profound sense of belonging. Moving into Nico's world was not about moving into a fortress of cold marble and armed guards, though those elements existed. It was about building a home within that world, a warm, bright space that was entirely their own. Nico's apartment, which had once been a sleek, impersonal testament to his power, slowly transformed. Sasha's favorite cozy blanket appeared draped over the expensive sofa. The smell of her cinnamon coffee became a permanent morning fixture. A small, somewhat lopsided pottery vase she had made in a class with Rosa sat on his desk, holding his pens. These were the tiny, quiet flags of her presence, and Nico cherished each one more than any territory he had ever controlled. Their love did not erase the men they were, it refined them. Sasha's inherent bravery, once a spark of reckless impulse, grew into a steady, enduring flame of strength. She learned the nuances of Nico's world not with trepidation, but with a sharp intelligence that surprised even him. She began to offer insights into his legitimate businesses, seeing opportunities for community outreach and connection that his more traditional advisors had overlooked. She started a small, funded program to provide bakery training and jobs for young people trying to leave the harder streets, a project that was entirely her own and that filled Nico with a pride so fierce it almost hurt. He saw the good in her not as a weakness to be protected, but as a strength to be integrated, a compass that could guide his own power toward a better, more lasting legacy. He was no longer just a boss, he was a man building a future worthy of the woman he loved. Nico, in turn, learned the profound strength that exists in vulnerability. With Sasha, he could lay down the heavy armor of his command and simply be. He could talk about his fears for the future, his regrets from the past, and the constant weight of his responsibilities. She would listen, not with pity or solutions, but with a quiet understanding that seeped into his soul and lightened the load. He found himself smiling more, laughing freely, discovering a joy in simple moments, a shared meal, a walk in the park, the quiet comfort of reading together in the same room. The man who had once commanded silence with a glance now lived for the sound of Sasha's voice. His love for her was a constant, humbling, and empowering force, making him not weaker, but wiser, more complete, more human than he had ever been. 1 year to the day after she had thrown the water in his face, Nico took Sasha back to the opal room. This time, they were not at a regular table, but on the private balcony under a canopy of stars, the very same balcony where he had once conducted his most serious meetings. Now, it was filled with flowers and lit by soft, golden candlelight. There was no fear in Sasha's heart, only a deep, thrilling anticipation as she looked at the man across from her. He spoke not of business or power, but of their journey, of the incredible, unpredictable path that had led them to this exact moment. He recalled her bravery, her laughter, her kindness, and how she had dismantled the walls around his heart brick by brick. Then, he got down on one knee, and in his hand was not a symbol of his dominance, but a promise of his devotion, a ring, elegant and beautiful, designed just for her. His voice was thick with emotion, but his eyes were clear and sure. "Sasha," he said, "you were the bravest thing that ever happened to me. Please, make me the happiest man in the world. Marry me." The word yes left her lips not as a whisper, but as a joyful, certain affirmation that echoed in the quiet night. It was a beginning, not an end. Their wedding was not a small affair, but a grand celebration that beautifully, defiantly, merged their two worlds. Rosa was the maid of honor, beaming with a happiness that was completely free of fear. Marco stood as Nico's best man, his stern face softened by a genuine smile. The guest list was a tapestry of their lives, cafe co-workers and business associates, old friends from Sasha's neighborhood and respected figures from Nico's complex empire. It was a declaration that their love had built a bridge, and on that bridge, a new kind of family was being formed. They danced their first dance not as a Mafia boss and the woman who had defied him, but simply as Nico and Sasha, two souls who had found their perfect, unexpected match. Life moved forward in a beautiful, ordinary, extraordinary rhythm. Years passed, marked not by conflicts or power struggles, but by the milestones of a shared life. A home filled with even more laughter, a bakery that Sasha successfully opened and ran, its windows always glowing warmly. And then, the most profound change of all, the gentle, awe-inspiring arrival of a child. Nico, who had faced down his enemies without a flinch, held his newborn daughter with tears in his eyes and a trembling in his hands that spoke of a love so vast it terrified him in the best way. Sasha watched him, her heart overflowing, seeing the fierce protector become a gentle father. He was a man completely, wonderfully undone by love. Their story, which had begun with a moment of dangerous impulse, was now a deep, slow-moving river of devotion, a testament to the fact that the bravest thing a person can do is to love and be loved in return, unconditionally and without fear. Their legacy would not be one of fear, but of this love. It would be in the strength of their family, the goodness Sasha brought into Nico's world, and the peace he built to shelter her. It was a story that proved that sometimes the most dangerous risk leads to the most beautiful reward. It is a story that continues to unfold, each day a new page filled with the simple, profound magic of a love that was chosen, fought for, and cherished. And it is a reminder that every great love story is unique, waiting for its own moment to begin. If you have been captivated by the journey of Sasha and Nico, if your heart has yearned for their triumphs and ached for their fears, then know that there are countless other stories waiting to be told, other worlds waiting to be explored, other hearts waiting to be discovered. To ensure you never miss the next tale of brave hearts and unforgettable romance, to journey into new worlds of passion and drama, remember to find the subscribe button and become a part of our growing community of dreamers. Your next favorite story is waiting just for you.